Welcome to Negotiation with Alice, your negotiation podcast. Everything that you do where you need to get on the same page with someone else is a negotiation. So whether you have to negotiate a contract with someone, or you simply need your boss to sign off on that program that you'd like to implement, or you want to figure out how to rebalance the chore structure in your home, or talk about what vacation you want to go on. All of these things are negotiations. So in my podcast, we go over both personal and professional conversations, which all are considered negotiation, and I will give you tips on how to come out ahead. Welcome to the show. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Today, I have an international guest, so I'm very excited to introduce Amne Suedi to you. Hello, Amne. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Let us know where you're calling in from.
So today I'm in Tanzania, which is in East Africa.
Wow, that's like really far, and I'm very excited to talk to you. I'd love for you to share with my audience what you do and, the kind of work that you do and who you work with.
Sure. So I'm an international lawyer, and I specialize in business and investments. And I negotiate large scale contracts across mining infrastructure projects that are taking place on the continent. I represent foreign investors that could be multinationals, family offices, sovereign funds, but I also work for some governments as well. So both sides.
Wow, interesting. So I'm very excited to talk to you because what I asked Amne about today to discuss with me is about cross-cultural negotiation. So for any of you who may be doing some kind of negotiation or business dealings with people in another country, particularly in this one, which is another continent entirely with several countries, there's always going to be cross-cultural negotiations. And so I'd love for you to sort of kick it off and talk a little bit about what American business people can learn if they are going to be doing any kind of negotiation. But also, I would love for you to dive into, there's obviously so many different cultures in Africa. It's not like it's one culture. So then how do we navigate that as well? So let's dive into that.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Definitely, Africa is not a country. It's a continent of 54 countries, and it's very diverse. So East Africa, West Africa, South, Central, North, come with their own traditions, right? So even if you are African and you're really well versed in doing business in East Africa, it doesn't mean that if you go to Nigeria, that you're going to necessarily know exactly what's going on. So I think for me, I work mainly in East Africa, East and Southern Africa, and that's already quite diverse. So I'll give you an example between Kenya, which is a well-known country in East Africa, and Tanzania, and we're neighbors. And the way of doing business already is quite different because in Kenya, people are a lot more business oriented. They kind of get straight to the point. So there's not that quite like America, I would say.
Sounds like
They kind of, so they kind of just get straight to the point. And, and in Tanzania, it's very different. People like creating that middle ground and getting to know. I always make a joke because you kind of have to you get to know first everyone in the family before you get to the point. So, so that's something to be mindful with. And my experience, for example, with American investors that I've worked with, Americans are very much straight to the point as well. And I think yes is yes, no is no. Like you kind of know when a deal is going to go through or not. Now, in Tanzania, for example, yes does not mean yes, and no does not mean no. So
I'm a little bit
kind of, so you kind of have to draw on a lot of different factors in order for you to make a conclusion about where you stand in a negotiation. And things go very slowly. So, for example, for me, who has been in Tanzania now over a decade, doing business in the region over a decade now, I know the language, and things will be a lot faster because there's that automatic trust when you speak the same language. There's that automatic trust, so things go faster. But when you're an outsider, you have to go through the process of building the middle ground and getting to know each other and building the trust before you can actually really have meaningful negotiation.
So in negotiation speak, we have several biases, and so it sounds like similarity bias works in your favor when you show up and you're able to speak the language, because they feel like either oh, you're one of us, or you've spent enough time learning our language that that's a good
Yes.
proxy for understanding who we are.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Now,
that's the case.
so imagine if there's an investor, American investor, or a business person who wants to do a business specifically in Tanzania, and you're coaching them and telling them, look, you're going to have to spend more time. What does that look like for a foreigner who maybe isn't local, who can't go to dinner, who can't hang out and meet the family, right? Like, what does that look like? Or does that look like they have to fly all the way over there and spend several weeks, right? What are some of the suggestions that you have in order for a negotiation to even begin?
I think it's really important when you're in that situation of being an outsider, but you've seen an opportunity that you want to pursue, to take the time to get a good local partner who understands the language, who understands the people, and who can fast track everything. Because I'm, for example, for me, I've been living here over a decade. So it doesn't matter how many weeks you're going to spend, unless you want to spend 10 years as well, which most people don't have that time. It's going to be tough. So I think a foreign investor needs to focus more on trying to get a partner that understands the local environment in the different African countries in question, but also understands where they're coming from as well, understanding their culture, what they want as well. And that person can be the bridge between, those two places and be able to translate both ways, in order to get the deal done. I think that's the smartest thing. Before, I think, and I think this is a lot of people are kind of moving in that direction in terms of a way of doing business. Before, it was very much, people thinking that they could just kind of fly in, but it just takes such a long time. It's such a steep learning curve. So yeah, so I think that it's much easier if you get a trusted local partner who gets it.
So that brings up a couple of other questions for me. So one of them would be, if I am looking for a local partner, is that a micro negotiation where the local partner is trying to negotiate whether they trust me to bring, because their reputation is on the line, right? Because they are saying,
Yeah.
hey, I'm vouching for Alice, Shikina, et cetera, et cetera. And so if they are embedded in a culture that takes a while to build that trust, how does that like middle person really vet the outsider so that they feel comfortable to be able to put their own reputation on the line with their community, like that micro negotiation that happens?
Yeah, that's such a great question because and it's real as well because you encounter a lot of people actually that are not the real deal as well. And relationships are very fragile anywhere in the world, right? Like it takes such a long time to build trust anywhere, I would say. And that can just be broken anytime. I think it's really important to do thorough due diligence on a person before, ask around, don't be shy to ask for referrals to really get that comfort. But also, I think it's important to definitely, if you're going to have a local partner or be a local partner, I think it's very important to have that physical meeting as well, because that interaction face to face is extremely important. For me, for example, I really trust my gut instinct, And a lot of the time, my gut instinct is going to tell me whether I can do business with this person or not. So that compared with just some good due diligence and, thorough looking into someone's background, etc., I think are absolutely key.
So it sounds like, in the United States, I feel like culturally we rely very, very heavily on words. And what I'm hearing you say is that the nonverbal communication is just as
Yeah.
important from your perspective and your culture.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of things that are in the unsaids, and there is a lot of things also in the sound that someone makes that are not necessarily words.
Right, right.
So, yeah, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, let's say I'm over there, I've got my quote unquote translator slash intermediary, right? What are some things that Americans should be careful about doing, which might be offensive to someone in Tanzania, for example, in a negotiation?
Okay, I think one of the important things is to respect the time. So time is captured very different in African countries versus in the US or even in Switzerland, for example, right? It's very different, but you need to respect time. So a lot of the time, Western investors want things very rushed and very fast, and especially American investors, they want things to happen like, yesterday. But that can be offensive if you don't actually you need to go with the flow and you need to go with the pace. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I've seen this happen sometimes. People, and it's usually linked to the pace of the negotiation, that sometimes the foreign investor, let's say the American investor, is going to have direct contact with the people that the local partner, for example, or the local host has introduced them to. That's an absolute no-go. You always have to keep the local person in the loop. And actually, a lot of the time, it's kind of an understood cultural thing. So it means that if you bypass me to go to someone I introduced you because you think you're going to go a lot faster, that's actually going to look very bad on you. And that person is actually going to tell me. So you're not going to get anywhere. So I think it's very important to just have faith in the local partner, to trust the timing. And also, it's important to understand when to get to the point and when to kind of not dance around the subject, but to kind of give time to get to know someone before you get to the point. So, yeah, that you have to kind of read the person and see what kind of person they are. A lot of the time, it has to do when you're dealing with government people, for example. If they come from the private sector, you know that they want to get straight to the point. If you know that they're typical government people, then you know that you need to build that middle ground and, talk a lot about trying and understand what they like, their background and all that before getting to the point. So I think that all of that pins down to not rushing the process and really just respecting the time.
So then, if someone were to go and try to negotiate something, they should not necessarily expect that when they show up at a meeting, like let's say the first meeting, that the deal is going to be done in that first meeting, right?
Yeah, no, the deal is hardly ever done in the first in the first
Really good
meeting.
information,
Yeah.
right? And so typically what is a good expectation for someone who's coming in as a foreigner? What is an expectation that you could set that is more like reasonable to say, hey, expect at least 5 or 10 meet, like what does that number look like? I know it's not an exact number, but like in a range so that people understand going in, hey, don't try to rush it. This is like a standard number of meetings.
Yeah. So I think that the general time that I okay, so It's a little bit nuanced. So, for example, if you go with someone, let's say you get a local partner that has an excellent reputation and is known to the government, let's say, and to the private sector, to the community as a whole. If, for example, someone like me introduces you to someone in government, let's say you want to do an energy project, because of the trust that I have built, things are going to go very quickly because it comes with the trust that I have built over, X amount of years. If you don't have someone like me, then you have to expect at least 5 meetings before there is the trust that starts to be built. But this is the 5 meetings, but in between the meetings, you need to keep the relationship going. So it doesn't work very well when you're very transactional. In Europe, I feel it's very transactional, and I think that that's why a lot of the time they don't succeed as much as, let's say, Chinese or Indian investors, for example, who understand that building the relationship and building the rapport is important. So it's 5 meetings, but in between those meetings, you're sending messages, you're asking about their family, you're asking, about different things. You're building that rapport and that relationship. Yeah.
Fascinating. I love it. Yeah. So it does sound a lot more like it's in alignment with like Asian cultures where,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. And so what are some of the other, so we talked about time, right? And talked about respecting the process. So the time that it takes to do a deal, which could be several meetings, as you mentioned, right? And then I always find time interesting, just in different cultures, time is valued differently, right?
Yeah.
Some might say like, oh, a German culture, like you're early, right? And in other cultures, people are notoriously late, and it's expected or understood or accepted, right? That sort of thing. And so, just in terms of that piece of it, can you talk about that piece of time where you're showing up on time, or there's also places where we talk about it's disrespectful if you let a meeting run late, right? If it's supposed to end at 4 and you end at 4:30, some cultures or people might feel like that was really disrespectful. Like it was supposed to end and it ended 30 minutes late. So talk about how time can be, how people can break some rules that they may not understand in Tanzania, and how that might kill a deal.
Yes, so that's such a great question. So the key there when it comes to time is to never get offended. You have to understand that the way a lot of Africans that look at time, it's not as rigid, I think, as a lot of the Western counterparts look at time. It's not rigid. It's something that is fluid. So being late is, you shouldn't be offended by that at all. So what happens a lot of the time? So for example, for me, I grew up in Switzerland where like, we're on time and, you're just like 1 minute. I think that the rule is 15 minutes is still acceptable, but you still get a side eye. So I grew up with that. And so when I came to Tanzania and as I do business in a lot of parts of East Africa, I had to really lose that when I'm here, lose that kind of rigidness about time, because otherwise you just hurt yourself so much, and also you lose the deal. Because if, for example, I mean, this has happened to me where I've had an appointment with a minister who has given me a time to go to his office, let's say at 10 a.m. I show up at 10 a.m. and I only end up seeing him at 7 p.m. and I'm just there waiting,
Wow.
and you can't be offended. You have to thank him for giving you the time. Like, you have to focus on the bigger picture of what you want to make happen and not be offended by that. Because if I went in and said, oh my God, I can't believe it, this is so disrespectful, I've been waiting for you the whole day, I've lost it. The door closes, because it's like, come on, things happen. That's kind of the attitude here. Things happen. I got called to the state house. This happened. So you have to kind of be to go with the flow, and to always allow. Now I've learned that you always have to allow for time. So you say, like, that it's gonna take double the time and double the money. and you have to be okay with that. Yeah, that's kind of what I'll say about that.
And then in the reverse, if the foreigner shows up late, then is that okay because it's sort of acceptable within the culture, or is it not okay for the foreigner to show up late?
Well, that's such a great question, actually. Well, I don't think the foreigner should show up late, because a lot of the time you're the one looking for something, right? For them, to them. That's why you're going to see, various people, right? So I would say don't show up late. Don't test it. Let's not test it. Just show up on time.
So at least like it's clear. There's a double standard. If you're the foreigner, show up on time, but do not get offended if the other party shows up late. So as long as that's clear, I think that's fair. That's awesome. And so, what other things do you feel like are similar or different in terms of negotiation styles between Americans and Tanzanians?
I think what is similar is that, at the end of the day, everyone wants to close the deal. So I think maybe the intentions in terms of the intentions are the same, but maybe the path to get to that goal can be a little bit different. But otherwise, I think that honesty is something that would be the same on both ends. What do I mean by that? There are some people, for example, that are in negotiations knowing fully well that they're not going to close the negotiation, So that is just offensive, I think, by US standards as it is by Tanzanian or Kenyan standards. So it's very important to have honesty, integrity, and to be also more or less your intentions need to be the real intentions, because when it comes to negotiations, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources. No one really wants to waste their time. um yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, wonderful. So, I'm very happy to learn all of these things, all the differences and the similarities. I think it's very valuable for people who are doing international business. Do you also do international negotiations like with Europeans or with Americans in your role specifically?
Yes, absolutely. I also work with a lot of Swiss investors, for example, and European investors, Australian investors as well. So yes, I definitely do that. I would say that my focus is on African markets, but I also have an office in Switzerland and increasingly have clients that are also looking to enter, let's say, the Swiss markets as well. So, yeah, it's international global business.
And when you're helping these other partners, right, come in to try to, connect with African entities and organizations, do you give them a lot of the tips that you're talking about today? Like when they come in, do you tell them, look, like this is going to take some time or you need to be patient? Are you translating like negotiation styles and cultural differences like in real time?
Yes, definitely. I try to do that. But, for us as lawyers, we only act on instructions, right? Sometimes the truth is, in the world of international business, you meet very big egos and people who think they kind of know it all. And if they don't want my guidance, then I'm not going to give my guidance. Or sometimes I even do give my guidance and they don't care. They think that they can do it, themselves. Ultimately, they end up failing. But, because I understand the cultures very, very well, and I understand what needs to be done in order to close a deal. I definitely try and translate it in real time to clients, investors that are interested in hearing this and implementing the same.
Well, I think it's fantastic because not only are you an expert in the law, but you are also an expert in the culture so that you can really bring like double the amount of expertise to your clients. Nate, thank you so much for being here today. I would love to know if anyone is interested in getting in touch with you, in working with you, or forging a partnership with you. How can they reach you? Aside from the show notes, where we'll have all of Omne's information, what is like one piece, whether it's a website or email, that you'd like to give out to everyone today?
Sure, thank you. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Amne Suedi. You're welcome to send me a DM. And you can also go to my website, www.shikanagroup.com, where you will actually get a lot of free resources on doing business in Africa and some of the things that we've spoken about intercultures and negotiation styles and tips. You'll find a lot of free resources there. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Amne, again. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Until next time.